My name is Joey Hartman, and I'm the president of the Vancouver and District Labour Council.
And I'm Andrew Wilhelm Boyles, and I'm deacon at St. Catherine's Anglican Church.
Okay, you have all heard the proposals, and you've also heard Metro Vancouver Alliance's commitments. They're also in your program, so you can all follow along as we now turn to the part of our evening that we know everybody is here for. In addition to hearing what we are about, to hear how the candidates are going to respond. And so now it is, candidates, your turn to respond. We're going to ask each of you to respond on the issues as we've put them forward, and we are going to push you for, in your minute, for a yes or no position. So we'll try not to interrupt till you get to your minute, but we are going to be nudging at you to really ask you, are you prepared to work with Metro Vancouver Alliance? We're prepared to work with you. We've made that commitment. You can see the energy and the commitment in the room, and we've been working 1.5 years to develop these issues, and so we want to know if you're going to be there to work with us. I am going to ask people who are chatting in the room, please take your conversations out into the hallway. We do want to be respectful of all of the speakers here. So let's get started. I'm going to give you a mic, and I will interrupt you when it's time to move on, and you'll pass the mic to the next person. We have 4 issues, 4 candidates. We're going to start alphabetically with Adriane Carr on the first issue, and then on the second issue, we'll move it to Kirk LaPointe as a starting point and move through the candidates in that alphabetical order. So everybody will have a chance to be both the first speaker and the last speaker. But it is a very tight time frame, so we're going to be really nudging you along, okay? So let's make sure this is working. Hello, 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 hello? Can you hear that? Everybody can hear. Okay. So on the first issue of social isolation, starting with you, Adriane Carr, as we aim to make Vancouver a more inclusive city, are you prepared to work with us at Metro Vancouver Alliance to first develop innovative solutions to social isolation, and number 2, to reform the permit process to facilitate small local organizations who wish to put on events?
Yes and yes. And in terms of the second question, I actually started work on it because as a councillor received information about a group, for example, putting on a neighborhood party, Ross Street area in South Vancouver. They ran into the barriers you mentioned around putting their party on. I took their points, put them in an email to the city manager. Her response is, I'll get back to you. But I've started the process going. In terms of solutions to social isolation, number 1, we have to put people in charge of the neighborhoods and the places they live. The decision making has to be by those people who are living in an area to be truly collaborative in the decision making around what their neighborhood, what their place looks like. We have to bring place making into city processes, urban design policies that actually combat isolation. We have to look at things like creating more 3-4-story level buildings rather than so many high-rises. High-rises, do as studies show, lead to more isolation. And finally, we have to, I can't wait for applause. Finally, we have to make sure that we fund neighborhood houses, community centers, community gardens, arts and culture, because they combat isolation.
Thank you. So that unequivocal yes and yes. Over to you, Kirk LaPointe, on the same question.
Yes and yes. I am not the NPA leader that you might think you know. Okay, I grew up in poverty. I'm the product of a single mother who was a hero, who had to decide whether to keep me or keep my older brother. She sent my older brother away to live with friends. So I understand isolation. And I think we need to change our culture in our city from one of isolation to one of inclusion. We have to stop beating up on our community centers. So we're going to commit to work with MVA to develop innovative solutions around social isolation, just as we've committed to rebuilding relationships with other neighborhood groups, community centers, and local associations. I also want to put on the table our own idea tonight. I was saved by a lot of adults, and I think we need a mentorship network that links the passions and needs of children with the talent and time of adults. We can get that done. we're also willing to examine any potential solution to cut red tape, including service level agreements in our city.
Thank you. Perfect timing there. And so again, a yes and a yes. Gregor Robertson.
Thank you. Yes and yes on Vision Vancouver's behalf, and a big thank you to all of you for being here, and thanks for the focus on social isolation. So we have an extraordinarily multicultural city. That is our great strength, but we do have real challenges with social isolation. That's one of the reasons that I created the Engage City Task Force, which made a whole amazing set of recommendations around actions to enhance public space, to enable people to connect a lot more significantly in our neighborhoods. We have seen a lot of new events, celebrations, block parties in recent years. We've done a lot to support a lot more celebration and connection in our city, and we need to keep advancing that. So really important to facilitate the process. My mayor's working group on immigration is also focused on Sanctuary City and making sure that newcomers to Vancouver are safe here as well. So a big focus has to continue on making our city inclusive. It's a point of pride for many of us, but we have more work to do. Thanks.
Thank you. And finally, Meena Wong.
Thank you. I actually took part in the MVA consultation process on the social isolation. And I see that part of my recommendation has been being included here. And I have to say that there are four different elements in social isolation. There's cultural, linguistic, and economics. My mother was a single mother for 6 years before my father was allowed to join her. So I know what it's like to live in poverty. I have decades of experience in building bridges between diverse cultures, nonprofit organizations, and environmental organizations. The voice of immigrants and indigenous people need to be heard. I am an immigrant. COPE has indigenous people, candidates, to
Your time
bring
is up.
truth and consultation.
If you could just wrap it up.
Thank you. And we want to reduce stigma against low-income people, people with mental health issues, and other marginalized people. Yes, the answer is yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Thank you.